There comes a time in every soul's journey when the quiet whisper of the unconscious becomes a thunderous call, and you can no longer look away. That which you have buried so carefully, so skillfully begins to seep through the cracks of your persona. You see it not in yourself at first, for the ego is a fragile thing. You see it in others, in their rage, their pettiness, their selfishness, their lust. But know this: what you see and react to most intensely in another is but a reflection of what is unresolved within you. And this is the beginning of your confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is not evil, it is not demonic, it is human. It is part of your wholeness, your totality. It contains the impulses, the desires, the memories, and the truths you have rejected in order to survive within the structures of civilization. It is not just the murderer and the thief. It is also the artist you silenced, the lover you denied, the child who was never allowed to scream. And the more you repress it, the more it will demand expression in ways you cannot control. As long as the shadow remains unconscious, it is fate. I have often said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The same applies here, for the shadow is a principal agent of the unconscious. It slips through dreams, through accidents, through projections, through the masks we wear, and make no mistake, masks, they are. What you call your personality, your identity, is often merely the sum of your defenses against your own interior truth. In the ancient myths, the hero must always descend before he can ascend. He must go into the underworld, the cave, the belly of the whale. He must meet the monster, whether it be Medusa, the Minotaur, or the dragon. These figures are not external. They are symbols of the shadow. The monster is that which the hero must face within himself. The descent is into the unconscious. The weapons are courage, self-awareness, and above all, radical honesty. You may think you are a good person, that you are kind, humble, giving. But I tell you, these qualities are not true until they are tested by their opposites. Your kindness is untested if you have never acknowledged your cruelty. Your humility is hollow if you have never faced your pride. Your generosity is naive if you have never confronted your greed. It is in this confrontation that virtue becomes real, because it emerges not from repression, but from integration. To integrate the shadow is to reclaim power, to become whole. This wholeness is the goal of the individuation process. It is not perfection, but completeness. To be complete is to carry both light and dark within you and to live consciously with both. It is to say, yes, I am capable of betrayal, and still I choose loyalty. I am capable of hatred, and still I choose love. In this way, morality ceases to be an external code and becomes an internal discipline. You are no longer merely obedient, you are conscious. But most people do not wish to become conscious. They fear the shadow because they mistake it for the enemy. They run from it, distract themselves with pleasure, achievement, dogma, even spiritual bypassing. They would rather wear the mask of light than own the darkness within. But the psyche is not fooled. The shadow waits. And when it is denied too long, it grows monstrous. Then it breaks through in explosive emotion, compulsive behavior, destructive relationships. You say, I don't know why I did that. But I do. It was your shadow, unloved and unheard, crying out to be seen. There was once a woman who dreamed she was being chased by a wolf. Night after night, the wolf would pursue her through forests, through cities, through mazes with no exit. She ran in terror, always waking in sweat. When she came to me, I told her, turn around, face the wolf. And so she did. In her dream that night, she turned and the wolf spoke. It was her rage, her voice, her power. It had become a beast only because it had been exiled. Once she listened, once she honored it, the wolf no longer chased her, it walked beside her. Such is the alchemy of the soul. What you resist becomes your tormentor. What you embrace becomes your ally. The shadow must be befriended, not defeated. It is not there to destroy you. It becomes destructive only when ignored. Its true purpose is transformation. The Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of the snake eating its tail, is not a symbol of death but of rebirth. In the act of consuming its own darkness, the self is renewed. Do not think this path is easy. The work of shadow integration is perilous. It requires humility to admit that you are not who you thought you were. It demands discipline to endure the discomfort of inner chaos. You will be tempted to retreat, to numb, to return to your masks, but I urge you stay with it. The gold you seek is in the place you fear most. I once wrote that the gold is in the shadow. This is not metaphor, it is psychic fact. For every part of yourself you have repressed, there is a corresponding strength. In the cowardice you disown, there is a hidden courage. In the jealousy, a buried longing for love. In the anger, a cry for justice. These are not weaknesses to be eradicated, but messages to be decoded. The psyche speaks in symbols, and every symptom is a sign. If you listen carefully, the shadow will tell you exactly what you need to heal. It may come in a dream. Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, as Freud said, but more than that, they are the mirror of the soul. You dream of falling, of being naked, of being chaste. These are not mere fantasies, they are revelations. To dream of falling may be the ego losing control. To be naked is to be exposed seen as you truly are. To be chaste is to flee from what you do not want to confront. The shadow enters through dreams because it knows the ego sleeps. Yet, not only in sleep does the shadow appear. It shows itself in every projection. When you dislike someone intensely for reasons you cannot explain, ask yourself, what part of myself am I seeing in them? What have I denied that they reflect? The world becomes a mirror for our interior conflicts. Your enemies are often your teachers in disguise. And yes, there are times when the shadow is collective. Entire nations, entire cultures can project their disowned aspects onto others, creating scapegoats, villains, demons. Wars are fought not just over land and resources, but over rejected parts of the collective psyche. We demonize the foreigner because we fear the unfamiliar in ourselves. This is why true peace begins within. To make peace with your shadow is to withdraw your projections. Then you see the other, not as a threat, but as a mirror. This is why I say again, until you face your shadow, it will destroy you. Not out of malice, but necessity. The psyche seeks wholeness, and what you suppress will always return through illness, addiction, depression, sabotage, until it is integrated. But once it is, you become something new. Not perfect, not pure, but real. Human, whole. Let me pause here not to end, but to breathe. The next movement of our journey will dive even deeper into the symbols, the myths, the archetypes that populate the realm of the shadow. But before we go there, I ask you, gently but firmly, are you ready to face yourself? Not the self you present to the world, not the curated identity, but the raw, contradictory, wounded, radiant truth of your being? Only then does true transformation begin. Now that you have glimpsed the outline of your shadow, I must take you further into the symbolic underworld where it resides. You must understand, this realm does not obey the logic of waking life. It does not communicate in the language of clarity, but in symbols, myth, and dream. Here, the shadow is not a concept, it is a character in your psychic drama. It wears masks, it changes shape. It often appears as the one you fear most. But this is not a lead, it is a reflection. The more terrifying it is, the more it represents a truth you have denied. In myth, the shadow takes the form of tricksters, outcasts, and devourers. Consider Loki, the Norse shapeshifter, or Set, who slew Osiris, or even Judas, the betrayer. They are not merely villains. They are forces that disrupt, unsettle, tear down the known world. But why? So something deeper may emerge. The shadow is the one who breaks the illusion of the perfect self. It says, look again. You are not only who you say you are. In dreams, this figure may be the dark twin, the wild animal, the criminal, the lost child, the seductress. One man dreamed he met a man in a black cloak who whispered secrets only he could hear. That cloaked figure was not a demon. It was his inner truth, made strange by years of suppression. The unconscious must speak in masks until you are ready to hear its true voice. The shadow also hides in the archetype of the witch, the madman, the beggar, those whom society rejects. We exile them just as we exile our own unwanted emotions. But these figures are part of the sacred. They carry the wisdom of the wounded. The madman sees beyond the veil. The witch knows the ancient feminine rage. The beggar reminds us that we are never self-sufficient. Each rejected archetype points to a part of the soul that has been cast out and must be reclaimed. Why do we resist this so violently? Because the shadow confronts us with the illusion of our own goodness. It calls out our hypocrisy. It demands that we stop pretending. But more than this, it confronts us with pain, especially the pain of childhood. For the shadow is formed not merely by moral failures, but by wounds. The child who was told not to cry learns to fear emotion. The girl who was shamed for being wild learns to be quiet. The boy who was praised only when he was strong learns to bury his weakness. These parts are not bad, they are hurt. And what is hurt becomes hidden. To heal the shadow, you must revisit these rooms of pain. You must become both the witness and the comforter. You must say to the inner child, I see you. You were not wrong to feel. You were not wrong to need. You were not wrong to rage. Only then does the soul begin to thaw. Only then do you begin to re-inhabit the fullness of your emotional life. And let us speak now of the anima and the animuso's deep archetypal contrasexual forces within the psyche. For men, the shadow often appears as the repressed feminine, emotional, intuitive, chaotic, mysterious. For women, it may appear as the disowned masculine, aggressive, rational, dominant. To reject these inner polarities is to remain fragmented. Integration means the man must meet the woman within him not as a seductress or muse, but as his own soul. And the woman must meet the man within her, not as a tyrant or rescuer, but as her own clarity and will. This dance between the anima and animus is not about gender. It is about wholeness. The shadow often contains the qualities you most need to become who you truly are. The rigid man must learn softness. The people pleaser must learn to say no. The saint must make peace with desire. You do not become evil by owning these parts. You become free. But the ego resists. It clings to the familiar. It says, I am not like that. But when you say, I am not like that, you hand over your power to the very thing you deny. What you disown owns you. What you refuse to name becomes your puppet master. There is no growth without sacrifice. You must sacrifice the illusion of purity, of certainty, of control. You must allow yourself to descend not in despair, but in sacred humility. The descent is the path of the mystic and the initiate. It is the path of the soul returning to its source. And the guide through this descent is the shadow. Not because it is good, but because it is true. Now listen carefully, there is a danger here. One I must name with precision. Some, when they discover the shadow, become infatuated with it. They mistake integration for indulgence. They begin to wear the shadow like a badge to justify cruelty, promiscuity, domination. This is not wholeness. This is possession. When the shadow is not integrated but idolized, it becomes a tyrant. You do not serve the shadow. You listen to it, learn from it, and bring it into the light of consciousness. Consciousness is the alchemical vessel in which transformation occurs. You hold your darkness within awareness, not to dissolve it, but to redeem it. This is the sacred marriage of opposites. The union of sun and moon, king and queen, fire and water. It is not the triumph of one over the other, but their reconciliation. You may wonder, when will I know I have integrated my shadow? The answer is paradoxical. You will never be finished. The shadow is not a single enemy to be conquered. It is an ever-shifting landscape. As you grow, it grows. As you heal, it reveals new layers. This is not failure, right? Is life. The psyche is infinite, and the deeper you go, the more nuanced your understanding becomes. But you will know you are on the right path when your reactions soften, when you can witness your anger without being ruled by it, when you can feel jealousy and not act from it, when you can look into the eyes of someone who triggers you and see not a monster but a mirror. Then the shadow has become a teacher. I have often said, the purpose of life is not happiness, but meaning. And meaning is born from the integration of opposites. Joy is shallow when it is not informed by sorrow. Peace is fragile when it denies conflict. Love is hollow when it fears the truth. The shadow brings depth, it brings gravity, it roots the soul. And this is the tragedy of modern man. He has lost touch with his shadow. He lives in a world of surfaces. He medicates his pain, performs his identity, consumes rather than communes. But the soul is not fooled. It longs for the underworld, for the hidden, for the sacred. That is why you feel restless. That is why you feel anxious, empty, afraid. It is the call of the shadow. The forgotten parts of you are knocking at the door. Do not run. Do not numb. Open the door. Welcome them. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are simply incomplete, and that is the most human thing of all. There is something sacred in your suffering. Though the world has tried to convince you otherwise, I ask you now to listen not to the noise of external validation, but to the quiet wisdom of your pain. Pain is not punishment. It is signal. It is the soul's way of saying, something is missing, something is unspoken, something is unlived. And often what is unlived lies hidden in the shadow. You must understand that the shadow does not only contain the so-called dark impulses, rage, lust, greed, envy. It also holds the bright potential you were too afraid to embody. The poet who never wrote, the leader who never led, the lover who never risked their heart. These two live in the unconscious, imprisoned by fear, by rejection, by ancestral shame. The world did not allow you to be whole, so you split yourself. And now the task before you is the most holy one, to reunite what was severed. Do you feel the ache of that calling? It is not a romantic journey. It is a crucifixion of the false self. The persona must be unmasked. The ego must be humbled. The lie must die. And you will feel naked in that place, exposed. But in this nakedness, you will begin to see in it the idealized self, not the advertised self, but the true self. The one who weeps and rages, the one who doubts and dreams, the one who is fully alive. Let me tell you a story from the soul's deeper waters. A man once came to me plagued by nightmares of drowning. Every night, the same terror waves overtaking him, the sea swallowing him whole. He awoke gasping, terrified of sleep. And yet, I asked him not to run from the water. Go deeper, I said. Let yourself sink. And in his dreams he did. He stopped fighting the tide. He sank beneath the surface. And there, in the deep, he found not death but a temple, a cathedral beneath the sea. He had been running from his depth. He feared his sadness. He feared the grief he had never cried. But when he surrendered to the shadow of sorrow, it became sanctuary. The nightmare was initiation. This is the function of the shadow. In dreams it invites us to the temple of our hidden truths. And sometimes the temple appears as a cave, a well, a forest, a crypt. These are not settings of horror. They are wombs of transformation. In ancient rites, the initiate had to pass through the underworld before returning with wisdom. So must you. Your descent into your own unconscious is not regression. It is renewal. The world teaches you to chase light. But light without darkness is blinding. You need contrast. You need the chiaroscuro of the soul, the play of shadows across the inner landscape. Only then can you see in depth. This is why mystics speak of the dark night of the soul. It is not punishment, it is pilgrimage. And the guide in this night is not your ego. It is your deeper knowing. It is your archetypal self older than your name, older than your personality. It is the self, the wholeness that includes both your conscious life and all that lies beyond it. The self speaks not through control, but through symbols, synchronicities, sudden insights. It may come in the voice of a stranger, the line of a poem, the whisper in a storm. Pay attention. The world is alive with your own meaning, waiting to be seen. You are not alone on this journey, for though the path is inward, its symbols are universal. The myths of all cultures echo the same structure. The hero departs, faces trials, descends into the unknown, meets the shadow, finds a boon, and returns transformed. This is your story too. Whether you are a teacher, a parent, a seeker, or a skeptic, you will face the descent. You will be shattered. And in that shattering, something essential will be revealed. Do not resist the fall. You are meant to break, but not to end. The vessel must crack so that light may enter. The persona must collapse so that the soul may emerge. But it is not enough to collapse. You must rebuild. You must gather the pieces not as they were, but as they are now, transfigured by truth. This is the alchemy of the psyche, not destruction, but transmutation. I have spoken of projection. Let me say more. Projection is the mechanism by which the unconscious reveals itself. You see in the other what you have not claimed in yourself. This is why love can be so intoxicating. We project the divine onto our beloved. But this is also why love turns to hate when the illusion cracks. We rage at them for being human. But what we are truly raging at is our own disowned self. To withdraw your projections is painful. It means seeing yourself in the one you criticize. It means asking, where in me does that live? And it means reclaiming your power from every pedestal, every enemy, every fantasy. Then, and only then, can you begin to relate not from need, but from wholeness. And in this wholeness, the shadow becomes less terrifying. It is no longer the beast in the dark. It is the companion on your road. It is the teacher who says what no one else dares say. It is the part of you that will not let you lie anymore. In this way, the shadow becomes grace. Yes, grace. Not the passive grace of religious platitudes, but the fierce grace of transformation. The grace that breaks your patterns, that ends your illusions, that forces you to look at what you have avoided. It is painful. It is messy. It is holy. So I ask you now, what part of yourself have you buried? What desire have you called shameful? What truth have you refused to speak? What fear have you armored with virtue? That is where your shadow lives. And that is where your freedom begins. If you have walked with me this far, then you have already begun your descent. Not all who hear this message will dare to go so deep. Many will turn away, preferring the comfort of persona, of certainty, of being good over being whole. But you, if you are still here, you have begun to awaken. You must now understand that the final gift of the shadow is not just healing, it is power. Not the power to control others, not the power to dominate, but the power to stand unshaken in the presence of your own truth. The power to speak without shame, to love without fear, to live without the approval of a world still asleep. This is the power that emerges from owning all that you are, the sacred and the profane, the wise and the wounded, the light and the abyss. There is no liberation without confrontation. There is no enlightenment without suffering. You must pass through your own darkness, not once, but many times. For each time you expand, a new layer of shadow reveals itself. This is not a flaw, it is evolution. Growth is spiral, not linear. You will return to the same wounds, but with deeper eyes, wiser hands, and a heart more capable of holding paradox. The paradox is this: you are both sinner and saint. You are the betrayer and the betrayed. You are the one who wounds and the one who bleeds. And when you can hold this paradox without collapse, when you can sit in the fire of your contradictions without judgment, then you are free, then you are whole. Wholeness is not perfection. The perfect self does not exist. It is an illusion built to protect the fragile ego from the terror of its limitations. But the soul does not require perfection. It longs for truth. And truth is messy, contradictory, dynamic. It lives not in ideals, but in aliveness. And so I urge you, let go of the fantasy of being good. Be real instead. Be raw, be honest, be wild. Let your rage speak in sacred language. Let your grief baptize you. Let your desire cleanse the shame. This is the sacred chaos of transformation. The mystics have always known what modern minds forget, that God lives in the shadows as much as in the light, that the divine is not sanitized, but fierce, that to touch the infinite, you must first die to the lie that you are only what is visible, the lie that you must fit in to be loved, the lie that your darkness makes you unworthy. You are not unworthy, you are unfinished. And the shadow is the hand of the divine sculptor, chipping away all that is false, revealing what was buried beneath. I remember once dreaming of a vast cathedral, not in heaven, but beneath the earth. It was not made of glass and gold, but of bone and root. There were no saints in marble, only wounded figures carved into the walls, crying, laughing, praying. It was beautiful, terrible, alive. And at its center, a mirror. I looked into it and saw not my reflection, but all those I had judged, all those I had feared. And behind their eyes, I saw myself. That is what the shadow does. It shatters the illusion of separation. It reveals that you are not other than the world, you are the world. Your anger is not separate from war. Your greed is not separate from exploitation. Your self-denial is not separate from the silence of victims. To own your shadow is to begin the work of redemption, not only for yourself, but for the collective. For as you integrate your personal darkness, you make less room for projection. You stop blaming, you stop scapegoating, you take responsibility. And from this responsibility flows compassion, not the pity of the superior, but the empathy of one who knows what it is to be lost. And so, the final form of the shadow is not the monster, but the healer. The shadow becomes the healer when it is seen, when it is spoken, when it is welcomed, when it is blessed. Then the very thing that once hunted you becomes the medicine you offer the world. Your wound becomes your wisdom, your flaw becomes your flame. This is the path of individuation, not escape from humanity, but full immersion in it. To be whole is to contain multitude desto, weep like the child, and speak with the voice of the elder. To stand in the world unarmored and yet untouched by its illusions. You will still fall, you will still forget, you will still make mistakes. But now you will do so consciously. You will fall with eyes open. You will stumble, but you will not regress. For the difference between the unconscious man and the conscious one is not that one never falls, but that one knows how to rise. And so I leave you now with this truth, not as an ending, but as a threshold. The shadow is not here to destroy you. It is here to wake you, to awaken you from the trance of false identity, to call you home to yourself, to make you real. You must face it not with fear, but with reverence. And when you do, you will discover that the monster you feared was your own forgotten face, that the darkness you fled was the womb of your soul, that the fire you avoided was the very light you had prayed for. So step into that fire. Let it burn what must die. Let it reveal what is eternal. And let the shadow finally become your guide not to darkness, but through it. For on the other side of shadow is not light, it is wholeness. And wholeness is the face of God.